Okay, I have begun recording.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. All right. So what's going on, man? This is the first episode of our podcast project slash experiment. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm ready to record. I'm looking forward to it.
Ready to record some pod?
Yeah, I'm ready
Um,
ready to lay down some pod.
yeah. I'm willing to bet that most people that are listening to this right now, if this ever gets released publicly, which we're still not sure if it will or won't, I'm willing to bet most people right now are people that know the both of us somewhat well, or at least one of us somewhat well. So, I guess we'll just go around just introducing ourselves, talking about like what this is, why we're doing it. My name is Marco. I am a graduate of UT Austin, and Eli is one of my good friends. Eli, you want to say some words about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Eli, and I am a senior at UT Austin. That's where we met, obviously.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I'm excited to get working on the pod.
yeah. So the podcast, which is called The Wrong Fit, you would know that if you clicked on it and you saw the name of the podcast. This was sort of my idea because I had done a podcast with some friends a couple years ago. That was an outwardly left leaning liberal political progressive podcast. Just fit all those buzzwords in there, and it ran for 8 episodes, and it was a lot of fun. We sort of stopped doing it after a semester. Just I think just lack of interest from some of the parties involved, and time got in the way, and it's hard to make time for stuff like this, and especially given that it was a political like news podcast. It can be exhausting sometimes to hold on those topics for a while. But I never stopped being interested in this medium. I think it's a really interesting medium. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's conducive to a lot of like interesting forms of content, especially like I'm really fascinated with this like long form content. So, and I wanted to do something with a more casual edge, and I wanted to do it with one of my good friends, and Eli was just the candidate that shot to the top of my list of people that I would want to do something like this with. And I know his boundless enthusiasm and charisma would really help a lot here. So that's how we sort of started doing this.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. What you make is just like I know no matter what we do with this, like we said, we're not sure if we're going to release this yet. I'm feeling really good about it, but like it's not something that we're going to get tired with, because like the conversations that we're planning on having, that we have had in preparation for this, are just stuff that we would be talking about anyway. It's not just, I feel like it's not just like another, everyone's doing the quarantine podcast thing. But this, I think what's different between just having a normal conversation and this is that we really like thought about what we're just gonna say, mostly.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I don't want us to get too far into it and say something really dumb and then say,
Yeah.
oh, we thought about this. But
Well, it helps that we can cut out anything dumb that we say.
exactly, we have full creative control.
So you have some experience with podcasting. It's not just me, right? You do
Yeah.
you were on at least one, right?
Yeah, so and starting out in high school, and that was obviously podcasts have been around for a long time, but that was kind of before the big boom that we've seen in the past few years. I had this little segment with friends. It's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's gotten taken down by now, but it was
But
just kind of before. Yeah, good. And we were just kind of just similar stuff, just kind of talking about movies, just having fun. And it was interesting. It was like pretty sophomoric, especially since we were in college, or we were in high school. And recently this past year, again, I was actually a political segment on a non-political podcast. And I remember being much more nervous because this was on my friend's podcast and I knew they were going to release it.
you wanna shout him out?
Yeah, it's Oddfish. It's my friends Rish and Pranav. Super good podcast. Like if you guys ever have a time to listen to it. And yeah, they talk about like a diversity of stuff, but I was kind of like their political guy on it for one episode. And I felt like I was a little bit nervous because I was like, oh, I need to be all professional and whatnot. But it did make me think like, wow, this is such a good idea, especially listening to some of their episodes in preparation, getting a feel for their style and whatnot. I was like, this is a really cool idea. And we, Marco and I kind of like, we've taken both of our experiences and twisted it to make it, I feel like now we really have something that's really our own.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely wanted to do this, especially with someone like you, Eli, because I think we have different experiences. But our educational background is somewhat different. It's certainly different. Yeah, you're a philosophy major, and I graduated as a business major. But we have in our circle of work, in in our respective work environments, there's more overlap than one might expect. So I think we have similar experiences. We have similar work experiences, similar like extracurricular background that I think could intersect quite nicely. Even though this is not supposed to be like a political podcast or anything, although politics will almost certainly shove its way in here at some point. But really, I would like this to be sort of like an extension of the conversations that you and I already have about lots of things that we're both interested in. So that's, Twitter, marketing, advertising, communications, clothing, fashion, style, music, stuff like that, that I think would be interesting in a sort of eccentric, like no specific topic every week kind of format, because I think that's really big right now.
Yeah.
In the past, like in the radio era, you had only a couple of stations, you had a couple of programs, and they were all very tailored because you had to have like you had to nail down something that a lot of people would like,
Mhm.
right,
Well,
at any given moment. But this is the kind of thing where we have our own audience of people that would be interested in whatever we have to say because they like our personalities, they like our way of speaking, they like the banter between us. And even if you're not interested in every single topic, hopefully we make it interesting enough for the listener. And I
yeah.
think that hyper specific nicheness of this medium is so interesting, and it's so fun, and it makes it so that you just get so much fulfillment from the podcasts that you listen to regularly, that are either about the things that you're interested in or just feature people that have a really good banter and rapport, and that's the main reason why you listen to them.
Yeah, it's like deep sea diving, I feel like, compared to like, some other media that just scratches the surface. I feel like podcasts, you can really, especially in a long form, you can really just deep sea dive and really get in there. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, I think that analogy works really well. Deep sea diving. You've ever deep sea divin? Is that what's the word?
What's the past
Dove
participle or whatever?
I don't.
I have never deep sea dove. I think you got it. Yeah, deep sea dove. That sounds the most
Okay.
right.
Okay.
But metaphorically speaking,
I suppose it would be useful at this point to maybe get started with the introduction out of the way and everything. So we hope that this becomes a product, an experience that people would be interested in, and if not, then they'll never know because we wouldn't have published it. So
I think the best place to start is actually with you, starting at the top, like with the Formula One stuff.
Formula One. Yes,
go.
sir. So before I fanboy out, what do you know about F1?
I don't know much. I had a Forza game when I was, it must have been in middle school or high school. I think probably early high school. I had Forza on the Xbox 360, and that was fantastic. But
Okay.
when it comes to actually knowing things about, both the sport and the engineering, I don't know very much.
Yeah. But
yeah.
you're familiar with it. Like you've heard the title, you've heard of it.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I couldn't be friends with you for longer than maybe a day without.
Well, I mean, and I think that's more a function of me today. Maybe when you first met me, you could have gone a very long time without knowing that I'm a fan of F1.
Yeah.
I've been a fan since 2013. But I've actually been to Grand Prix or Grand Prix is it's a French term.
Ooh,
But
okay.
I've been to here. So they have so they race all around the world, right? It is a global sport, and they have a race here in the States, and that's in Austin. So ever since the inaugural Grand Prix in 2012, I've been to all of them in Austin. Because my dad is a fan, my uncle is a fan, and they've been following it. My uncle's been following it pretty closely for a while. My dad kind of went in and out of it throughout the 2000s, early 2010s, and all. But I became a fan, right around 2012, 2013. And I sort of, 2013, that's when I was starting high school, and throughout the years, life got harder, and dealing with stuff like when you're a senior in high school and then when you go to college, I was kind of falling in and out of it, out of following the sport. Because if you don't know, the races are held on Sundays, and most of the races are in Europe or in Asia, and the time zones don't really work out
Yeah.
there. Because in Europe, I mean, best case scenario, your race starts at 7 o'clock or even 8 in the morning.
I hadn't
And
even
in
thought
eight,
about that.
yeah, and in Asia, they can start at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Wow.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
But as the sport gets more popular here in the States, you have providers like ESPN that will give it to you on demand. And they'll do reruns, later in the day at a reasonable hour. So it's all about just making sure you're not getting spoiled,
Yeah.
between then and then. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to bring this up because there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the world of F1. For one thing, coronavirus, has thrown a wrench into everything, right? And F1's no different. So we were supposed to start the season in Australia. That is the season opener. That's been the season opener for a while. And 2 days before the Australia GP was set to start, it was canceled. And when was it set to start, you may ask? Well, that was in mid-March, which was when all of this was coming to a head, right? We were getting canceled. South by was canceled that week. Schools were getting canceled, and Formula One was kind of being a little coy about it, whether or not they would cancel it. So it was just hours before the first practice session was supposed to start in Australia that it was canceled.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn. Down to the wire.
Down to the wire, they endured a lot of criticism for that because they knew that there were some pit crew members that had been infected in at least one of the teams. So they knew that was going on, and they still were playing coy with it, even as other international events were being canceled, sports stuff especially. So that put an extended winter break for the sport, as F1, the company, the management was trying to figure out their next step. And in the end, they decided, hey, we're going to have an 8-race calendar, at least to start with. These are the confirmed races that we're going to have. We're not going to have fans at them. So pretty much none of these races are going to have fans, in the grandstands or anything. Each team is supposed to have the minimum number of team necessary. There's going to be social distancing. They all have to wear masks 24/7, and to prevent unnecessary travel, we're going to have races back to back at the same circuit whenever possible, which is not a usual thing. That pretty much that has never happened before.
Yeah, especially with such an international sport, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there are ordinarily there'd be 20 races on the calendar in 20 different countries, and but this time, we've been to Austria twice. So the season started in early July in Austria, and the week after that was Austria again. So there was 2 Austria GPs. We went to Hungary, and we've just finished the 2 back-to-back GPs at the UK. The circuit there is called Silverstone. So we've been to Silverstone twice. So we've had 5 races so far. And they're prepping for race number 6 this week in Spain. So again, it's just been interesting to see like how sport could get back to doing what it's doing in a somewhat responsible way, and in all of this time, they've only had one in coronavirus infection in this whole traveling circus, and they've been to 3 different countries at least
Wow,
over the past month and a half.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of makes me think like if this sport that is doing stuff in Europe where things are undeniably better than they are here, right? In terms of coronavirus.
Certainly.
And yeah, yeah. And they're taking more precautions than we are as a sport. And it's also a sport in which the only close person contact is in the garages, among the pit crews and everything. But the actual sport takes place at, 200 miles an hour in cars, and the drivers have helmets and everything. It makes me wonder, like, why exactly we're starting basketball again here in the States. Have you been keeping track of any of that?
Yeah, yeah. What I was actually going to say, because I've definitely been tracking basketball. That's like my sport.
Yeah.
And what I think the closest to me, the closest foil between NASCAR internationally, or not NASCAR, F1 internationally, and what we have here, it would be baseball, because baseball again is kind of similar to NASCAR in that it's a low contact sport.
Yeah.
There's not definitely more than, you're not going hundreds of miles an hour or whatever, but you are not staying in contact. And it's just crazy how much they've bungled that, because I have been following the NBA pretty closely, and it's just like night and day between the NBA and the MLB, because the NBA in the bubble, they've done constant testing and they haven't had anyone come back positive, because just with by nature of the bubble, at first I was surprised. It's like no one, they conducted, I think it was 300 something tests, 360 tests, I think. And none of the players, none of the everyone, like the 360 people who were tested, came back positive. And I was kind of surprised for a second, but then I thought about the measures that they've taken in the bubble, of how they are just, it is a bubble and they are cut off from society, and there's no one in and no one out. And if you do have to leave and come back, you are quarantined for, I think, 7 days, or a certain period of time. I'm not exactly sure what, but it is, very militant there. Whereas with the MLB, it's they're like, oh yeah, we'll have fans at the games. We'll have, and again with NBA, no fans at the games. Like, it's super weird to see. I don't know if you have seen, but
Yeah, I have. Admittedly, I don't know much about the precautions that the NBA is taking.
yeah.
I know that there's a bubble, and I read somewhere or I heard somewhere the bubble's in Florida.
Yeah, the bubble's at Disney World, actually. Like, they
Oh, that's
have,
funny.
yeah,
Okay.
it is kind of weird. Like, it's I think that the players are even, and it's weird because Disney World is actually open, but since it's like a big like thing, they're in like a portion of Disney World that's not open to the public, obviously. And it was funny. One of my friends, she's like did AU volleyball, and she texted me and she said, like, these the stadiums where they're, or the stadiums where they're playing uh NBA basketball right now is where they had their AU like national tournament, which is super weird, because there's
Hmm.
no stands. It's like a small stadium, because it is intended for things like AU, and it's not intended for crowds. And it's weird having all on the background, you can see like the fans, and they're all people virtually in basically a Zoom call, and you just it's weird, like you're watching the game in like a chat with a bunch of other people, and you can talk to the other people, but you're not actually there, and you show up on TV. It's kind of weird, and you still have to pay for it, I think. And I don't know why you'd pay to watch a game on your laptop or whatever, but
Yeah, I don't know why you would do that either.
yeah. But number one, it's great that they're keeping it safe. And basketball, like you said, is such a high contact sport, that, and I think if there's a way to do it right, that's definitely the way to do it is like a bubble and a real bubble of like, you can't leave here. Once you're here, you're here, and we're going to keep this quarantine. MLB baseball, they're going around the country and still playing baseball. And I think for Miami, their team, like a bunch of like coaches, like part of their coaching staff got coronavirus. And that's something that the league is going to have to deal with. And I think the league had even, I haven't been as keeping in touch with that sport, but I think they'd even talked about shutting it all down, even though they had started it up, which, you know, if you can't do it right, you shouldn't be able to do it at all.
Yeah, I remember when Abbott a couple months ago was saying that he was going to try to get NASCAR to race at, I think, Texas Motor Speedway. And I remember thinking it was way too early. I think that might have been in late April.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that. And I remember thinking that was way too early, and that there's no way to do it safely. And even if you had everybody wearing masks and everything, like, it's an unnecessary risk. But now the situation here has not gotten any better since April.
We're still riding that first wave.
It's still the first wave. And we should stop thinking about it in terms of waves too. I don't know that that's very helpful. But anyway, but now I'm sort of like, okay, there is this thing about bubbles, and there is, you know, showing where that the masks are very, very effective at cutting down transmission. And again, F1's has had 5 races so far with only 1 infection, and you know that involves, and the bubble is like 5,000 people, and they are doing tests like every 2 weeks or, you know, every other day. I don't know what the number is, but they're doing a lot of tests like crazy. And they're doing this to try to recoup some of their losses from having canceled so many races and not having the fans and the TV rights and everything. Like, it's a whole mess, right? So something that I thought would have been irresponsible a couple months ago, now I'm seeing that, well, it can be done safely, and it is giving the fans some respite, right? You know, F1's an international sport, so there are a lot of fans that are interested all over the world. You know, but the NBA is huge here. I mean, huge here in the States. I mean, you know, Formula One is not as popular in any given country at the level that basketball is popular here in the U.S., right? It's sort of like mid-level, low-level popularity in lots of places. But here in the U.S., I mean, basketball is like a culture, just like football and baseball to an extent, and lots of other sports here, right? So any way you can provide that safely is going to be like a good thing, I think. Yeah, I've gone from this is irresponsible and dumb, and we shouldn't be doing this at any point, to thinking, well, if it can be done safely, then we should. But again, I don't know. I felt weird hearing about basketball opening back up, because that out of all the sports, it didn't seem like that seems like the sport that you're more likely to get like one false negative, and that kills everybody because of all the vapor.
There's a lot of contact.
There's contact, there's people breathing and everything. I haven't seen any of these games, but I'm imagining that none of the players are wearing masks while they're playing, right?
Not while they're playing. On the bench they usually do, but while they're playing now.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really help very much if they're, you know, if on the court, you know, there's droplets flying all over the place. Because we've seen false negatives before. So God forbid, right? But God forbid we get a player that got a false negative, he plays, and now everybody has COVID that played, you know, at any given game. You know, in F1, so a guy has a false negative, well, he's still wearing a mask because the pit crew guys don't need to, they're not really exercising, right? They're working on the car, or they're doing pit stops and stuff like that. So they keep their mask on. So that's already cutting down the risk. And the drivers, again, they are literally shielded with a helmet, and they're driving really fast cars, and there's no contact there either. Although, I mean, the cars make contact, but that's not the same thing. You know,
different kind of danger.
It is a different kind of danger. So I, real quick tangent, I attached a link there on our Google Doc. Did you click it?
Yeah, with the three tire. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been able to read or see it while we've been talking, but this was really interesting, and this kind of went viral a little bit when it happened because the race leader, a guy named Lewis Hamilton, he drives for Mercedes, and on the very last lap of the race, he blew a tire, and he was only a little bit ahead of the second place runner, a guy named Max Verstappen, and he was like maybe 30 seconds ahead of him, but it's a circuit that takes a minute and a half to go around, and it was like in the first third of the final lap, he blew a tire. And you might think race over, he has to like pull over and call it, but he just keeps going because the tire is not so destroyed that he can't race on it. But he crosses the what?
The picture is just pretty like incredible because you see that tire and it is punctured, like it is indented.
Yeah, it's gone. Like
It's gone.
that tire is totally gone. And he finishes the race, and the second place guy is like right behind him as he finishes, pretty much like only a couple seconds away. So he caught up a lot because obviously when you only have three tires, you're a lot slower. But they did a calculation. Well, they ran the lap time that he did, which was like 20 seconds or more slower than the usual lap time around that circuit in a Formula One car. But that time of Hamilton on three tires was faster than the time of like a lot of other motorsport series that race at Silverstone. So that was really funny. That like an F1 car with three tires was still faster than a whole bunch of other motorsport categories that race at the same circuit. So that was that was just a fun thing to have seen, and I saw it live. So that was really just a lot to handle.
Yeah, and that's why we watch sports, right? It's just like that excitement of the horse race of like what's going to happen next. Like obviously in a sport like NASCAR or any sport really where injury is always a possibility. You don't want anything negative to happen to any of the players, but you're just kind of in it for what's going to happen next, the excitement and like just who's going to cross the finish line, whether that be like points or a literal finish line. It's just like, holy shit, what's going to happen next? And then you see something like a quarter of the guy's wheels, like 1 out of 4 of this guy's wheels are just off now. Like that just adds a whole new dynamic to that final lap. And how many laps do they do? Like how many laps was that race?
So they try to optimize so that regardless of how big the circuit is, each race will take about an hour and a half, about an hour and 40 minutes total. So I think in Silverstone, I think it was around 55 laps at about a minute and a half, about a minute and 20 seconds, I think. So that kind of averages out to about an hour and 40. And, there are some circuits that are really small that are a lot shorter. So they do like 70 laps, right? So it was like the last lap, and these guys have been going flat out for 55 laps, and he's supposed to be comfortably the winner, but he lands a puncture, and now his win is in jeopardy because, for one thing, sometimes punctures make the car undrivable. They puncture, they go off, the suspension's broken, and you have to pull over, and you just can't keep going. But this was really lucky that he was able to finish the race with the puncture. And had he not been far away enough, he might have lost the win. So again, it wasn't even just that he got a puncture and he finished the race. He won the race. I mean, that is just crazy. That's like fairy tale stuff right there.
Yeah, and the last 90 seconds, like that is just incredible. You're watching that for 90 minutes, and then it comes down to the 90 seconds where you're just on the edge of your seat, which is just incredible.
And that happens a lot in every sport. I know that like basketball, they have like last minute swings of the game, and suddenly you were up for so long, and you get a couple lucky threes, and that's it, right? You lose.
Yeah, it's all about momentum, and then that last few minutes, it's all about momentum.
Yeah. I was watching the Bulls documentary. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I'm about halfway through. I like 5 episodes in.
Yeah, I'm only on the first episode still, but in one of them, Michael's talking about how he would carry his momentum from the very beginning of the game to the end of the game.
Yeah.
Because he never considered a game over like his teammates would. Like his teammates, like if they were down enough, like they would be like, all right, on to the next one, even though there's still like 2 quarters left. That's the term, right? You use quarters?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that okay? Just making sure. I like basketball, but I don't watch it enough. So, but he, Michael said, no, we would come back to win games because, you got to keep that momentum going. You can't, every game is winnable, even if you're down by however much.
Yeah. That's what I really loved about Michael Jordan and that documentary is just like, some people say like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, or like, it's not a marathon, it's a sprint, about different things. And like, he just treated everything like it was both a marathon and a sprint. Like the entire season, he was going at 110%. That's just amazing. I think it's funny. Like everyone knows both you and me are cheapos that we're not getting the ESPN Plus or ESPN whatever membership. I waited until it was on Netflix. I needed to do it live, but it's really well done documentary for sure. And I'm a LeBron guy as opposed to Jordan, but I still appreciate it. Yeah, that's probably contentious, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I admire them all. I'm sort of like, you tell me a basketball player is good, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll support him.
Yeah.
Harden, Irving, LeBron, my boy Curry, Steph Curry.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate basketball culture, if only for the sneakers it produces, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sort of chill, right? You told me the player is good, and I'm like, oh well, I mean, I got to see that signature shoe though.
I think LeBron's the GOAT, but man, Jordan's shoes definitely take the cake.
I mean, see, that's the thing with Michael Jordan. It's like basketball shoes nowadays, like they're basketball shoes, like they're utility, like they're tools.
Yeah.
But Jordan's, the first like 12 or 13 of them, like you can flip them and like now they're lifestyle shoes,
Yeah. I mean, especially the Jordan 1s, like I can't imagine anyone playing in those nowadays.
I mean, they're impossible to play. I mean, I swear, I think I've like sprained my foot wearing Jordan 1s just like walking around.
Wow.
I was in severe pain for a while, but I mean, you got to wear them, Like,
yeah.
It's my J's.
Yeah. It is really interesting how both cultures like intertwine with each other. And it is funny because, when basketball came back on, I know we talked about, the different stuff that we've been wearing over quarantine. When basketball, and, we can elaborate more on this, but when basketball came back and I started watching basketball games, and not as much even the games because I don't have cable, so mostly I'm looking at the clips, I'm looking at the highlights, and following the scores, especially now because all the games have been on like TNT or whatever cable, like NBA TV and stuff. But when the games started coming on and I started, getting back into it, I pulled out the Jordans and just kind of, I'm not going around seeing anybody, but I was just wearing around the apartment when I went to pick up my sandwich or whatever at the Subway or wherever I ended up going that way. He saw the fit, and the fit was fire, and it was just like, it was for me. I think that's what makes it special. He saw
the fit was fire.
The fit was fire. He didn't have to put the sandwich in the toaster. It was this.
Oh, okay. All right, that's enough now. That's enough now.
Let's settle it down. No, but I mean, it's just weird. Like the culture and the lifestyle and the sneaker, like even though, like you said, no NBA basketball player has worn Jordan 1s in the last 20 years on the floor, it still has this like indescribable connection, or not indescribable connection, but this like intense connection between winning in the sport and wearing the shoe. It's just really interesting.
I'm telling you, like when you wear those shoes, it's like you're right with the connection thing. You're identifying with the success that specific sneaker has like brought, right? So like my infrared 6s, I mean, those are like some of like Jordan's like most iconic shoes, right? Like he I think he wore them So they were 1991. So the
Yeah.
1991 championship.
First championship.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's like iconic, you know.
Yeah.
You got other ones too, like the flu game 12s, where he was playing them. They like it was that colorway that he was playing when he was sick, and he won the game. Like, yeah, I'm telling you, it's like historic connections there. So like even if it's like a non OG colorway or whatever, it's like a new style or anything, like it's that silhouette that you're carrying that tradition to the modern day. And these shoes, some of these models are 30 years old now, and but they're still timeless though.
Yeah, they hold up definitely. And yeah, it's just it is it I think after maybe like the Jordan, like Jordan 3 and like kind of on, I think I love the Jordan 1. Obviously, it's like a fantastic shoe. Jordan 2 is kind of meh, but I
Yeah,
think Jordan 3 and on, that really it gave his personality. Um, as much I don't even own, like I have Jordan 1s, like that's my whatever style, blah blah blah. But I think it is cool that you have uh like such a personal connection in this shoe, and a lot of the details just mean something, and it feels like there's a real synergy between the artist, the designer of the shoe, and the athlete. It's just really incredible, that relationship has like been fostering. And Nike was a running shoe before Michael Jordan, and now it's not. It's an everything
yeah,
shoe. Every
yeah,
shoe is Nike. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you got to watch the It's on Netflix too. It's like a design
Abstract.
Yeah, I was sorry,
Yeah.
design. Yeah, you know the one with Tinker Hatfield in it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Legendary. Yeah.
that's like one of the yeah. So for the uninitiated, Tinker Hatfield is like the sneaker designer guy. Like he did most of like the early Jordans,
Air
you know,
Max.
through to like Air Jordan 20. He did the Air Maxes. Like this guy is a legend. If you think I always tell people, like, if you think you've never seen a Jordan 1 or an Air Max 90 or an Air Max 1, like you think you've never seen it until you actually see one and you're like, "Oh yeah, you know, that's just that shoe."
Yeah.
Right? Like these iconic silhouettes that are so timeless, that are still being like retro today. Like kids are still wearing them. You know, kids like, you know, budding sneakerheads, like their first sneaker will be like just an ordinary Air Max 1, you know, but they're simple, they're clean, they're iconic, and they're, you know, they're accessible, they're for everybody, right? And they started off, the Air Max 1 started off as a running shoe. I mean, can you believe that? Like, I mean, the Air Max 1 is way more comfortable than the Air Jordan 1. Like, I will say that
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
They're way more comfortable, but like, you
Yeah.
still wouldn't run in them though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not today anyway.
No, no, definitely not. It's Yeah, you're walking around in those shoes, and
Yeah.
it is incredible. Like the way that it has become more accessible, um, like for just regular people, have like these designed by Tinker Hatfield, designed by this great person. If you are even at all, like even tangentially, if you own any Nike shoe and you're even somewhat of a sneakerhead, you probably have a Tinker Hatfield shoe, whether it be a Jordan and Air Max. I know he's done other ones like besides like those two brands, but
Right.
it is just, yeah. I mean, it's just incredible, the scope of the influence that he's had, and a lot of people probably don't even know his name.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but I mean, he's a legend in the sneaker community, and
yeah,
that's
if you
got to be
know,
enough. Yeah.
if you know, you know. Like if you know, you
I
know.
mean, Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan and him are like buds, you know. So like,
Yeah,
that's got to be enough for Tinker, I think.
yeah, yeah,
So that's a great documentary. I definitely recommend, even if you're not like a sneaker guy, a shoe guy, or you know whatever. I definitely recommend that, just because like, you know, I got my dad really interested in that, you know, and he's not really a sneakerhead at all. But he was really interested in it. Just the design, the science behind it, and some like behind. I mean, Jordan is interviewed in that too. So you know, even if you're interested in like basketball, like some of the behind the scenes stuff, there's some really good stories in that specific design documentary.
yeah.
Um, so I definitely recommend that. But I kind of want to circle back to what you brought up a little bit. You know, wearing quarantine fits, right? So what we're not a lot of opportunities for flexing. Not a lot of, if you're a responsible person, there's not a lot of parties going on. There's not really anything doing. So
Yeah, flexing on my dad.
you gotta find what's the word, motivation to dress your best on your own,
Yeah,
around
yeah.
the house, on the Zoom or whatever. So what are you wearing now? What are you wearing these days, man?
What am I wearing these days? Well, I mean, you can see what I'm wearing. Wearing it's been t-shirts, a lot.
Right?
But it's weird. I feel like I've recently had a bit of a quarantine renaissance, so to speak. Of like, I started wearing more like button down stuff. And I've tried to like change up my style a little bit, just because what else is there to do? And that hasn't come from buying new anything. It's just been kind of going how I wear certain things. And because I think that I don't have as many sneakers as you, or I don't have. I mean, I've got a fair amount of sneakers. I'm not gonna shortchange myself too much,
Ooh,
but
ooh.
but it's about keeping it like you can have the same stuff, but you need to keep it fresh. And some things like I've grown out and I know you wanted to. I wore the headband today specifically because, I saw you were gunning for my headband.
Yo. I mean, it's no shade though. It's no shade though.
Yeah.
It
Well,
looks good. Yeah. I mean, it works for you because you're growing your hair out.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah.
do that. Like if I wore a headband, it just wouldn't cover any like there'd be nothing going over it. That's sort of like the platonic like ideal for the headband. You got like some curls or whatever kind of coming out of it, to give it some character, some texture.
Yeah, yeah, give it some volume, or like it's like peeking out a little bit. Yeah, but and then that's another thing is like, just having my hair longer, you kind of it just like alters like even slightly the way you look in certain things. And there's not a ton of eyes on me right now, but it also alters the way people look at you, which I think is interesting as well. Like even at work I haven't like cut my hair since before March. And I think it's different because at work, like it's kind of just slowly, like week by week, I'm jumping on the Zoom call and it's like, oh, his hair's a little bit longer. And I think even for you, when a couple weeks ago when we were talking via Zoom, I was like, oh yeah, my hair's grown out, and I showed you that my hair goes down to my chin now, and you were like, whoa, wait a second. You can't really tell as much on the Zoom, especially when I'm wearing the headband. But yeah, it's just kind of. I also like started wearing the chain too.
Oh
Just
yeah,
yeah,
I'm noticing the chain, looking good, man.
keeping it a little icy. Keeping it a little. And again, it's just for me. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I think quarantine's really made me evaluate on a lot of different levels what I do for me versus what I do for other people, and not in a negative way that I'm doing it for other people, because like stuff like showering and keeping yourself kempt or well kempt, it's important no matter what, and it's good. You should do that for other people, and there's nothing wrong with doing it for other people. But it is a different mindset of like, what am I doing, why am I doing it, and not that anything to change, like not anything that I should necessarily change my what I do. But it is interesting just kind of evaluate like, why am I getting dressed up today? And it started out of like, I'm getting dressed up, or I'm not going to get dressed up at the beginning of quarantine because no one's going to see me, and this is something I do for other people. But as time's gone on and I've gone through this like I said, renaissance a little bit of like my thinking, and just my action as well. It's just like, no, I'm going to kind of get dressed, partly just to break up the inanity of quarantine, but also just because, hey, like I like the way I look in it too, even though no one's going to see me, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's just mostly been kind of the same shit though, like button down sneakers, like
I'm gonna have to
shorts right
I'm gonna have
now.
to bleep that out. By the way,
What?
you said it's been the same shit though.
Oh shit. Oh damn it. It's been the
Uh,
same stuff.
yeah,
I
just for the
yeah.
listeners, we kind of have like an unofficial thing that we would not use profanity on
Yes.
the pot, but that's okay.
Eh,
I just like giving you hell.
And,
Um,
and Marco knows I am very profane. Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll dial it back a sec,
yeah. It's
back
all good.
a couple notches. But yeah. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
all good though. Yeah, I think that's really insightful, especially because I think you and I kind of followed the same pattern initially. So, quarantine started, and at first I was just wearing like just oversized t-shirts and like basketball shorts like every day, flip-flops and everything. And I think what ended up changing that was because I don't know, I was definitely wearing my slides just too often.
yeah.
They started developing this really gross, like greasy, like, and I know this is gonna imply more about me than about the slides, but I don't know, like obviously like you wear something every day and you don't really wash it or anything, like stuff is gonna
Yeah.
happen. So I was thinking, these things were definitely not made to be worn this often for this long. So I was like, I gotta like make a change and start wearing my shoes again, because I mean, you were right, you mentioned you what's the word, referred to how many shoes I own, and I own a lot. It's too many. Don't worry, I don't. I'm not trying to flex. It is a problem because I've had to move several times, and it is extremely annoying to transfer all these boxes from apartment to apartment, and then now back to home. But they're here and they're in my life, and I got to give them some love and rotate them and everything. So it was like mid-April where I was like, I'm sort of failing myself here by doing the bare minimum, because it's like you mentioned, right? Your first thought that comes to your mind is like, well, no one's going to see me, so what's the point? But then you kind of like think about it and you're like, well, dressing nice or dressing to like a minimum standard isn't necessarily only for other people. It's also for like the confidence and the way you think about yourself, right?
Yeah.
And to be clear, like a lot of people are perfectly content wearing basketball shorts and oversized t-shirts at home, out and about or whatever, and that's fine. Like wear whatever you
And
want. I don't.
don't get me wrong, that slides and joggers and big t-shirts, like that's still a look,
That could still
maybe
be
it's
a
not
look.
something you want
Yeah,
to. Yeah, you can make it work. You can make it work.
that could still be a look for sure, for sure. But there is like, at least for me, there is like a minimum standard that I hold myself to. And I don't hold that to other people, by the way. Like I'm not, everyone should live their own life, but to myself, I hold a minimum standard for clothes. And nowadays, honestly, it's been, a nice, well-fitting t-shirt. It's been a watch too, because you were mentioning ice on your neck. I got some ice on my wrist.
Hey,
Hey,
that's
so I've
nice.
been,
Yeah,
yeah, I've been getting into watches more.
I like the leather strap down.
Yeah, leather strap is real nice. But the watch face is really nice because
Yeah.
it's solar powered. So yeah,
Ooh,
so you leave it in the light. It can be natural light, it can be artificial light, and it charges.
that's icy. That's sunny.
I really recommend this brand. It's Seiko. It's like one of like the more well known like watch brands among watch people, but it's like entry level still. Like they're not too expensive and they're extremely high quality. So I definitely like if you're interested in like upping your watch game,
Yeah.
trying to move away from like your Walmart watches. And no shame in the hey, no shame in the Walmart watches. We all got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to spend about $100 on a nice pair of sneakers, on a nice watch, $100 on a nice watch, I definitely recommend Seiko. I recommend some of the upper echelon stuff that Timex sells as well. Casio is a decent brand for that too. Citizen. I recommend all of those. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So like my minimum standard, like I said, has been a nicer, well-fitting T-shirt, a watch, uh, trying to wear fewer hats around the house just to keep my hair healthy and keep my hair aerated. I'm trying to comb my hair to what I want it to look like every day. If you knew me before quarantine, you pretty much could not catch me without a backwards flat brim snapback. But things have changed, right? So we have to, and I'm losing my hair, so we need to adapt. We need to adapt to new circumstances. And I think this is the most surprising thing, especially given that it's summer. But I'm trying to wear pants every day. Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're staying at home, so it's not how warm can it possibly be at home. But a
Yeah.
lot of but a lot of people still find it constricting and not their preferred look. And to be clear, like I'm not like I do wear shorts sometimes, but I'm not really a big shorts guy. Like in general, I tend to be a lot happier in the winter where I can wear pants, sweatpants, joggers, and hoodies and jackets and stuff like that. But I'm thinking, hey, I don't need to live my life by the demands of the sun, right? Like
Mm.
I'm above the sun, so I can wear pants, especially since I'm not outside that often anyway. So there's not like a big deal with wearing pants, even in the summer and even pre-COVID. But now, especially, like I'm just not going outside
Mm.
at all for any reason because of COVID, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it, but I'm finding that like right, so the minimum standard, so it's the pants and like a nice pair of shoes that kind of like matches with the whole outfit.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that that routine is really nice because it still keeps me planted in reality. It keeps me planted in my day to day. And again, like it just helps me with my momentum, right? Because like working at home, not having to go anywhere, not having to see anybody, it can be really, there's like a disorientation that you can develop, like
Mm.
a hypnosis about like with the stuff that you're doing, because of the monotony of being at home and being here and not seeing any of your friends. So like that's one of the things that you can do to that, at least for me, that has helped me like stay grounded in reality and like stay in the moment,
Mm.
and it's given me motivation to like keep doing good work and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that what you said you hit on with the momentum is really key. Of like, I think that there's nothing, that can. There's nothing like a some sort of routine to keep your momentum going. I think that like it's kind of like we were talking about F1 earlier. Just to kind of use that as a metaphor. It's like almost like a pit stop. I
Yeah.
think of when you hit that moment on your routine, whether it be you know your workout or your morning routine or your nightly routine or whatever it may be. Like I think that that's always a time where you have this little pit stop and you get your stuff ready and then you go jump off from there. I think, and I think that it's something that I haven't valued very much, because I feel like both of us in college, being in college, it is such like a fast paced, like always go 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 thing, that it felt like I didn't really need those things to restart my energy, restart my momentum, because everything was always happening, and I was
Yeah.
just trying to catch up. But now it's just a different ball game, with the dynamic of like how you're trying to get that momentum going. I think.
Yeah, I mean every day, like pre-COVID, like you're sort of forced to restart everything, right? Because like at
Mm.
some point you have to get out of your house and go somewhere and be
Yeah.
somewhere on time, right? So like that sort of forces you to shower and think about what you're gonna wear and lots of things. But I
Yeah.
don't think I think until that gets taken away, you don't realize the positive like effect that has on your life.
Yeah.
But now that it's gone, and again, like early on in quarantine, like I was allowing myself to slide on that metric, right? Just wearing whatever and not really caring, going maybe a little too long without showers or anything. No,
Me too,
I'm
man.
yeah, it's a little gross, but
Yeah,
hey,
it's real. Yeah.
it's gross, but it's real. Don't deny it. Uh, but and I'm like, well, damn, like that's really affecting my motivation. It's affecting my internal thoughts. So it's like I gotta show up and show out, even if it's just for the kitchen, like.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to like find more solace in like posting like on Instagram or
Yeah.
Twitter or whatever. I'm trying to like just show that, be more confident, be more outwardly confident with myself
Yeah.
and just like the stuff I'm wearing and everything, and a lot of people tend to mistake that, I think, for vainness, but
Yes.
there is sort of like a give and take to that. Like there is
Yeah.
like a surface level of vanity, I feel, but there's also like a much higher level of just like the things that doing that, like the way that positively benefits like your confidence, I think is really
Yeah.
important. You can't deny, like it's hard to deny that, I think.
There just is something really different, like between like flexing for your fam and flexing on the gram. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh,
That was pretty good. That was pretty
yeah,
good.
that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. This motherfucker's spitting, or this man is spitting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't worry about it. At this point, just fine. You've
Yeah.
broken the seal.
I think that the bleeps will make it better, honestly. I don't know. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
But like it is just different because you just have like something about your family. Like, the beautiful thing about family is that there's no judgment, and like the love's there and whatnot. When you have like when you're flexing to your friends and you're just showing off, and it can come off as like vain, and I think for some people it is, but it is just when we're in the situation that we're in, you kind of this is how you talk to people.
yeah, and again, like I think so long as there's like a mutual understanding that you gotta like gas each other up, especially among friends, right? Like
Yeah.
you see your friend wearing something dope, or they look cool, or like they're looking good, like you gotta gas them up. You gotta let them know that they look good.
Yeah.
If that reply, if that sort of comment is consented to, obviously,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we gotta put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah.
But
Gotta keep
yeah,
the
but
ground rules. Yeah.
but I think among your friends, like that is like a given. So
Yeah. Yeah.
your best bud is wearing some cool kicks, or they style their hair a different way, or they smell good, or whatever. Like you gotta let them know. Like
Yeah.
we don't talk about enough like the way that hearing those compliments is like such a positive thing for your self-esteem.
It is positive reinforcement of what you're doing, and you need it. It would be cool if we were all just people that we could always be independent and blah blah blah. I mean, maybe it would be cool, maybe it wouldn't. I think that a lot of people idealize that. I wish I was just super independent and I didn't need gratification from other people, but that's just kind of not really the world we live in. And I think it is important, and I think it creates bonds between friends, and that's how part of how friendships work, and that's why we need friendships. And so I guess from that perspective, it is beautiful that we can just you like, that's a fire fit. That's for me saying that to you is free.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel happy, and it makes me feel happy.
Yeah, and again, I can't reiterate enough, like this is for like people that are close with each other, not just like this is not saying we think it's okay to catcall or anything gross like that.
Of course.
But yeah, like like I think to a point it can be healthy to acknowledge that hey, I'm looking for a little bit of gassing up, like I need a self-esteem boost, like that whether it's good or not, like that is just the way humans are. So I think if your friends need that, like you gotta you gotta be respectful of that, I feel.
Yeah.
And being in quarantine, like it's really difficult, if you're doing it right, I want to say. Right.
Yeah. If you're actually doing it. Yeah.
Right. Like if so that's really difficult because you're not seeing anybody in person. But the sooner we can get back to that, I think the better. But in the meantime, like we've been talking about, like I've been finding it really fulfilling to dress nicely, to dress to my minimum standard again, and rotate my shoes, making sure that they're all getting some getting wear and everything. And I've been ordering, I've been like looking at clothes online and stuff like that, hoodies and t-shirts for long sleeve shirts for winter and everything. Like I'm just trying to like keep myself like motivated, keep myself like grounded to reality. Because it can be really easy to slip into like just this hypnotic thing, being stuck at home for so long.
Yeah, it is. It does have a mental effect. Like it's cabin fever, I think that we're all in it, or like you said, everyone who's doing it, I think is in it. Of like, yeah, it does have a long mental effect on you. And I definitely get what you're talking about. Like I a lot of times do feel kind of self-conscious about posting pictures on social media. Like you'll see on my Instagram, I haven't posted in like, I don't even know, I think since January, I haven't posted anything. Just because, I don't know, I get it's a combination of me feeling self-conscious about what other people are going to judge of it. And also just me, like me not wanting to like be vain or having like this super, like almost like aesthetic, like view for myself, like almost just a very intense, uh, you know, trying to stay on top of my stuff, which it isn't exactly healthy, and I don't think
Yeah.
it's good or positive in any way. And even on, it's even harder to post. Yeah, I think when you post yourself, like it's like it does. I get where people coming from, like, oh, it's vain or whatever, and I think there are times where it's vain. Like I had not a friend, but someone I knew from just a while ago, like when there was a lot of like racial unrest in this country and whatnot and what have you. Um, like I saw someone kind of in that moment of where we should be educating ourselves and thinking and being reflective of our own place and whatever systems that we inhabit. Like I saw like this girl that I know from way back. She like posted a picture like there was a very like well, all I'll say about it is like it's a very like all eyes on me type picture. Like it
Hmm.
was very like a picture of her.
Okay.
And someone called it out, not someone I knew, someone I didn't know, called it out in the comments of like, hey, like, and this was, mind you, like right in the middle of it. Like this was in June. And I didn't really think, I didn't say anything because I don't really know her, but I didn't really think it was kind of the right time for this kind of display, I guess. And someone called it out in the pictures as like, hey, you haven't said anything about these issues that are happening right now. And I just don't think that, putting yourself on your timeline or on your feed right now is like the best thing. But I think that's obviously a very special situation and like independent situation. But I think it's kind of just like the time and the place of things. And I think it's like generally pretty obviously a super positive thing. But in that instance, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this isn't what we maybe should be doing right now.
There's definitely there's like a semblance. No, I'm trying to think of the word.
Mm.
There's definitely like an aspect of like read the room kind of
Exactly. Yeah.
thing on social media, especially like if it was during the middle of like racial strife, back
Yeah.
in late May, early June, and your friends are like looking for their friends to say that they support, that they supported the anti-police brutality. Let's just say what we mean,
Black
right?
Lives Matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that they support Black Lives Matter, right? Like the friends are looking for their friends to say that because so often, like politically these days, like we don't really know. It's hard to know always like what wretched, horrible political views people are harboring, right?
Yeah.
So a good clue is to see like their output on social media.
Mm.
And if it's a friend that like maybe they're not that political or they don't really get political in the TL or whatever, like you want them to know, you want them to be able to say like Black Lives Matter, like here's a link to donate, here's a link to sign a petition or whatever.
Yeah.
And I it's good that you brought this up because I remembered feeling this way around that time as well. Because I was posting, I was taking some pictures of shoes or whatever, some things that I was wearing, and I was debating with myself, like, is this the right time to post about it? So I kind of like reconciled it by saying, look, I've posted about it on my stories. I posted about it before. Like, I don't think there's any doubt in people like what my position is, and I'll include links like in the post. Like the links are in my bio. I'm thinking, I don't think this is like the worst, or I don't think this is a faux pas, like a social media faux pas or anything, but it is sort of
Yeah.
like, it was like when celebrities were just being quiet about it and they're still posting pictures of them in like their yachts or whatever. Like, we need to know who among us are allies, right? Like who among us are going to be the people that are actually going to fight for these important things.
Yeah.
And
It's
if
like
you're
a
just
line in
going
the
around,
sand.
yeah, and if you're just going around like dancing around the topic, like, well, that says a lot about you, I think.
Yeah.
And this was a really big thing in Formula One. Just to circle it back even to
Yeah.
there, like, it's an international sport. It's not an American sport. They race in America, but there are no American drivers. So and there's only one black driver, and
Wow.
it's Lewis Hamilton, who is one of the most successful drivers in the history of the sport. He's a 6-time world champion. And, he was the guy that had to finish a race on 3 tires that we talked about earlier. And he's the only black driver in the sport, and until he spoke up and called people out and said, I'm ashamed that Formula One management hasn't said anything. None of the teams have said anything about George Floyd. Like, none of the drivers have said anything. And it shouldn't take the only black guy in the sport to say that. And then as soon as he did, like, all the teams came out and all the drivers came out and said, hey, we didn't know how to speak on the topic. We didn't know how to, and to a point, I kind of understand that, like, it is an overwhelmingly white sport. Lewis is the only black driver. We have one driver from Mexico and we have another driver from Thailand. So, even if you're being very, very generous, there's only 3 people of color on the entire grid and only one of them is black. So it's an overwhelmingly white sport.
Yeah.
So, and it can be difficult to, like, show your support without sounding, like a privileged, person or anything. But, to say nothing is even worse, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's important to say the right thing, but it is even more important to say something, I don't know if you've seen these from the NBA, going back on it. Again, like their jersey, like they're able to right now they're able to put messages on their jersey, like they have their name at the bottom, but they have another message at the top. And a lot of them have put like Black Lives Matter. Like there's a diversity of messages. I don't think they can put whatever they want, but there's like a diversity of messages that they can choose from. And I know that some athletes, international athletes, have put it in their own language, different things. And I saw one of them that a white guy was wearing. Mo Wagner, he plays for the Wizards, and it's funny. The reason I saw him, and this isn't super important context, but just pretty crazy, is he got into like this fight with Giannis Antetokounmpo yesterday. Like he like butt his. It was just this whole thing. You should watch the video. Like Giannis like butt his head against this young white guy. Actually, I don't know how young he is. I know it's his second year in the league, but he might be the same age as Giannis. But anyway, he had on the back of his jersey, like, this white guy. He's not from, I don't think he's even from the U.S., but he's got "vote" on the back of his jersey. When most of the other people have equality, Black Lives Matter, say her name, say his name, messages of that nature, and he's got "vote" on the back. And, obviously, civic engagement is super important to me. But that just doesn't sometimes, not to get too deep in this topic and not to be too divisive about it, but that doesn't seem like the appropriate message for right now. And I think it is important not only that you say something, but you say the right thing. But like you said, you definitely have to try at least. And I respect people. I think I'm grateful that people are trying now, but it just seemed a little bit off to have "vote," with everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, the vote thing is crazy, especially given that, like, lots of times, like, these acts of police brutality happen under both parties.
Yeah.
There are mayors in both parties that refuse to even look at alternative ways of policing or defunding or anything. Like, to say that we can vote for one party over the other and this issue will stop is just ridiculous. Like, that has never happened and it's not going to happen. Not to get too political, this is not a political podcast, although, fair warning, Eli and I are both very political individuals, so sometimes it'll come out. So
yeah.
if that makes you unhappy, get over it. No. But yeah, no, I mean, that there is like an element, of just read the room.
Yes.
Because when people are fighting, screaming at the top of their lungs for equality and they're willing to get violent over it, I mean, the last thing you want to say is vote. Because again, like, this has happened under both political parties. So there's no aspect of this that can be wiped away with voting. And civic engagement is important to me too. I mean, in my 4 years of college, I must have registered close to 1,000 voters,
Flex,
so
okay.
yeah, well, no, probably around 700 or so, but yeah, I like to say close to 1,000. It sounds better. But, so that's important to me. And I helped organize, voter registration stuff. And, I during my peak involvement in UDEMS, I was out there every single day registering kids to vote. And I still believe that's important, but
definitely
it is not the be all and end all. I mean, we need, like, forms of resistance, whether it's protesting or standing in solidarity with protesters, defying big corporations like the NBA or Formula One or MLB or NASCAR. Like, those are all acts of resistance that help us move toward our common goal. And voting is never going to be the main way, or it may not even be a way to get us there. Obviously, we need politicians and leaders that are going to be receptive to our values. But if they're not, then we got to take matters in our own hands sometimes and make some noise and demand our demands, right?
Yeah, we got to keep it for the people, by the people. You know what I'm saying?
I want to circle back to Instagram real quick. Real quick, first off, just to say that Instagram has become pretty much my favorite social media platform.
Okay.
And something I saw on Instagram the other day that I put down on the topic table that I wanted to talk about. So for those of you that don't know, Eli is the communications director for our College Democrats chapter at UT Austin. And Eli, do you make the graphics, right?
Yeah.
You're not outsourcing them to anyone?
No, I'm not. Yeah, unlike some people that we've met or that we know.
Yeah.
No, I've been doing all of it. It's honestly been part of it has been. I think it might have been my favorite part of the job so far. Has been working on the graphics. It's just kind of a fun, different change of pace to what work I usually do for both my job and with involvement in the club.
Eli, I think your graphics are very cute.
Thank you.
I think they're cute. I look at them and I'm like, these are cute graphics. Eli's got some cute little graphics.
I've got some cute ideas. I like people like the cuteness. I think it's got broad appeal.
So yeah, because I'm seeing like pastels, I'm seeing bubbly fonts, I'm seeing, lines and stuff. I mean, it's a step in a different direction for sure. And I don't mean that, and I'm not, for as maybe playful teasing as I'm being, I'm not, I hope I'm not being insulting.
No, yeah.
Because that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, these are some cute little graphics. Talk to me, man. What, have you done? Because I feel like you've told me off the mic, but I honestly can't even remember at this point. But is this your first foray into this kind of thing? Like, what are you using? What are you finding difficult? What's the challenge? Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so it is. I've definitely had some experience in the design world. I talked to you about architecture, your book. These are very different media to deal with, but like I think that a lot of the same concepts go back and forth. Definitely even photography, which is a totally different way of organization and composition and whatnot. It's super different, but there is like some tenets that go back and forth. So but I don't have any really political design experience whatsoever. I know how to use Illustrator and like the other Adobe programs pretty proficiently, and I've used them for design things like your book. But and maybe that is part of the genesis of the cutesy design is kind of going back on that. That experience is like you're working on a yearbook, and I tried to make the storytelling as like nuanced as possible, but at the end of the day it's kind of is like a cutesy thing. Memories, fun, yay, hags, like have a great summer. You remember that, right? And then people's yearbooks, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the genesis of my design. And besides going through, your the style guide, which has been very helpful. That's
who wrote the style guide, I wonder.
Yeah, he must have been a really smart guy. It's pretty great. For those of you who do not know, Marco is the architect of the style guide, and it is. Yeah. I kind of wanted and I hope that people that are listening to this don't take it out of context or whatever. But I kind of wanted a bit of like a return to form of like. I just wanted it to be clean. Like I didn't want it. I didn't want to do what you did. And I looked back at your stuff. Like I have been going through, and it's crazy. Like the folder, there's been several between your tenure and my current tenure. There's been several people in the position, and it's pretty empty. I'll just say the folder's pretty empty. There's not a lot of stuff there, kind of going back to when you were there. But I've checked it out. I've checked out a lot of your stuff, and I've really liked it. And obviously, like very different mentalities, I think. And I definitely wanted to make it my own and follow the guide of keeping it. But I think above all, what I wanted it to be is just clean. At the end of the day, I just want it to be at a minimum clean, because whenever you see something that's not clean, whenever you see it out there, it catches your eye. And, you want a good design catches your eye also in a obviously very different way. And I think that, ideally you like your designs catch people's eye. But at the bare minimum, you don't want it to be like visually offensive, So I've just been really focusing on keeping it clean, and trying to keep it different. Just because, like, I think when you see a bunch of like similar graphics with the same colors and like the same thing, you're like, they start melding into one of like, oh, this is just like you don't realize like, oh, they're having when it's different every week. It's like they're doing stuff every week, but when it's the same every week, it's like, oh, it just does a kind of a mental thing. It just keeps it mentally fresh, I think, to change it up a bit. And it's just fun. Like, I'm not going to try and make it seem like it's a big thing. It's just like, it's fun to do. Like, I remember for one of the graphics I did this summer, it was for like a sunset. It was just like kind of my idea, and I kind of just like went off that, and it was super easy to do. Like, it's just gradients and layering different like texture on it and stuff like that to like make a easy sunset. But it was different, and like I thought it ended up cool, and it ended up cute, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think that they're super like it feels very not political, and I think maybe I should make an effort to make it maybe a little bit less cute and a little bit more like I don't know. I'm still evolving the way that I'm thinking about it, but I am thinking about it, and I think that that's important. And I think that's when you're in a job like this where you have a lot of responsibilities, and you're in a political organization, it's easy for things like aesthetics to be pushed on the wayside, while you're just trying to push forward with like these like political goals, which are always very strategic and like very right brain, not left brain. I think I'm getting that dichotomy right. Or maybe it's the opposite. Who knows? But it's using the opposite side of your brain, and I think that just even keeping mindful of that, of the importance of design, and creating your face as a club, because we know what we're about. Everyone that's in our organization knows what we're about, but we want to expand our organization. Losing like valuable members like you this year, people who've been part of our club for a long time, and just have like experience and history. We need to get more members to keep the cycle going. And with the coronavirus, it's even more important that we make an effort to stay relevant, to stay fresh and stuff like that. So that's just my philosophy on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have people that are gonna replace me as the crotchety old person of the club.
Yeah.
I mean, you got people that are going to be there that'll have been there like their entire college career, just like me. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. The experience that becomes relevant to your day-to-day problems changes. So, no one needs to hear about, oh, this is what we did in fall 2016, and you're like, wow, that could not be any less relevant to what we're doing right now. So I wouldn't worry about that. But I think your point is well taken about the differing up the style for your organization, not having it be outrightly political necessarily. That's sort of my philosophy, and
Yeah.
pretty much every political space I've entered, I've tried to bring aesthetics from, album art movements, the Olympics. I've brought in stuff from, concert posters and the music world and stuff like that. Um, Mainly because I'm just sick and tired of seeing like another political graphic, that's like red, white, and blue, and maybe some contrasting colors and some fonts that are all the same, and I get tired of it.
Yeah.
So you can see some of my work, in the UDEMS folder. You can see some of it is kind of out there, a little out of left field. I think that's more pronounced with my Texas College Dems work.
Definitely.
And probably I'll link to to my portfolio in the description of this podcast. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry so much about making it outrightly political. I don't know. I think people appreciate a breakup of the monotony, and I think that's what you're providing in your own way, which I appreciate, which is why I wanted to jot it down and make sure we talked about it, because I remember thinking these are very nice.
It is nice because I think a lot of times people appreciate it like here, but don't like, it's not something you say kind of. It's just like, oh, that's cool. They caught my eye. I'm going to join the club, or I'm going to join this meeting or whatever. But it's nice to hear someone whose like voice I respect, like say like, hey, this is, thank you.
Well, thank you. No, thank you. I'm looking at did you do the, and again, we'll link to this in the description. Did you do the Summer Trivia Night one?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That looks good. That looks like it's following some of my ideas. You probably use some glow.
Yeah.
You use a little bit of this, a little of that.
And I used some of your font, like the fonts that you would.
I spot Streamster in there.
Yeah,
that's the font. Yeah, I spot it. Be careful with that one. You can't use it commercially. That's a big thing with fonts. Like using fonts, which is why I really like the Adobe Creative Cloud, because it's like all of these really good fonts, and they're all free to use commercially. You can use them for whatever you want.
They have a lot of good fonts.
Yeah, I don't even look around for fonts anymore, although I should still, because there are a lot of really great fonts that are not in the Adobe font store, if you will.
Yeah.
But like if you have your Creative Cloud subscription and, go look at the Adobe fonts and just I activate like 200 of them, like I have a lot of Adobe fonts, but I use them all, and I'm just like, before Adobe, because I used to use a program called Inkscape, which is a really powerful vector graphics program. But if you want to make it big in this game, kid, you gotta use there's my New York gangster impression. You gotta use the programs that are the industry standard, right? So that's gonna be, much to my chagrin anyway, the Adobe platform, which I don't hate Illustrator. I actually really like it now that I've used it a lot. But before Illustrator, I periodically would go around looking for new fonts that were free and free for commercial use too. I would just Google free new fonts for designers, right? And there's all of these like articles that come out, and it's like, 10 new amazing fonts for designers, and I would just look through all of them and get some new ones.
That seems like a great way to keep it really fresh, of like, these are new fonts for new designers. Like that's cool, because I think you can get kind of stuck in something if you don't try to just even in a surface level thing like that, just try to innovate on some level,
And that's what fuels my distaste for really rigid design rules for organizations, especially because like my background is in business marketing. And in marketing, they teach us, you can have a few things that stay consistent across your branding vision, so to speak. But obviously, like, you have to be able to tailor your message to the markets that you're tailoring it to. So, there is an element of like, the Coca-Cola logo is recognizable, so you shouldn't change that. But consumers are also looking for differentiation. How does your product differ from other products? So a good way to do that is to be really, flamboyant or eccentric or just different from your competitors. And that might include different aesthetics, different ideas, different rhetoric, that you're using to sell your product. And I find that in like political circles, that is not a way of thinking that is embraced, and I think that's
Yes.
wrong. um, People tend to overstate the value of stuff like colors and the same three or four fonts or whatever, and I just don't think that is justified. I mean, certainly it's not justified in my formal education, and
Yeah.
I have found that when I have a more free-form, freewheeling approach, and that's what I try to outline in the style guide too. I mean, it's a style guide, but it's also just like, look, here are some ideas, but do your own thing.
I think you really touch on two different mentalities of like, okay, we have this established thing like Coca-Cola or like whatever, like, you know, you can say anything that's like really established. And it's like, you can take the mentality of like, this is sacred. So like, let's not touch this. But I think it is a lot more beneficial and like a lot more innovative when you're like, no, like this is established, and we have this established, and now because there's this standard, it gives us room to tweak it, and make it different and make it fun, and even though we can keep some core things, that we keep the core, but we have the freedom to tweak it now that we have you know, this established thing, you know. But I think a lot of people are really scared to innovate in that you know, vein, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's just because people lack, you know, I wouldn't want to gatekeep, you know, education or anything,
Yeah.
but, you know, people just lack that understanding that, hey, if these big companies don't do that, then we don't need to do that on our campaign. You know, I use Coca-Cola as an example a lot, mainly because I'm a big, you know, soda fiend, but also because, you know, I pay attention a lot to Coca-Cola's advertising and branding and marketing, and it could not be more different each time. You know, they do old-fashioned stuff, they do futuristic stuff, they have different colors for all of their brands, all of their you know, variations. I mean, the Coca-Cola company owns vitamin water, they own Sprite, they have all of these different subsidiaries, and you think you pluck someone from the political world that doesn't really know what they're doing, and you tell the Coca-Cola team, no, in order to have a successful product, it all needs to be the same, and they all need to have the same fonts and everything.
Yeah.
They're gonna laugh you out of the room.
Really?
They're gonna be they're gonna be like, well, no, because we need to sell Coca-Cola to this market,
Exactly.
but we need to sell Sprite to that market, and we need to sell vitamin water to a completely different market.
Yeah, and I think that's so, like, the Sprite, even, you know, Sprite and Coca-Cola, there's a little bit more overlap probably than vitamin water.
For sure.
But I'm not as familiar with the vitamin water branding as much. But I will say with Coca-Cola and Sprite, like, you take a Sprite ad and a Coca-Cola ad, very different. Like, you've got a Coca-Cola ad, and, you know, usually they try to do something like pretty, like you've got the polar bears and you know, kind of family friendly, and then you got on the Sprite end of the spectrum, you got Drake's face coming apart, you know?
Like,
and then
Sprite,
LeBron's
like,
in them a lot too, I think.
Sprite is a good example because their branding for a very long time, for forever, has been very youth oriented. It's been very sport oriented, oddly enough.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, I mean, you wouldn't catch any athlete drink Sprite before, during, or after their physical exercise, but it is still like associated with that. Like, one of the very first Sprite ads I ever saw, and this is a testament to them because I still remember it like detail for detail, was like in a movie theater. It was a really common Sprite ad in like the mid 2000s. You know, you might be too young for that. You're like a year younger than me.
Yeah.
Are we like the same age?
I was born January of 1999.
Okay, so I'm about 6 months older than you. So I'm not that much older than you, but I will refer to you as a child.
Yeah, the boy.
yeah, I will refer to you as some kid who was born in 2005. No, yeah, but like in the mid 2000s, like in the movie theaters, there was this Sprite ad that came on a bunch of times, and it was like this kid on a really hot day on an outdoor basketball court. You know, he's at the corner, he's at the edge of the court, like not really on the court, but he's like on the sidelines, if you will. And he opens a Sprite, he drinks it, and he like is like falling into the basketball court, and you think he's gonna like break his face, right? Because he's like falling onto concrete, but it's actually water. So it actually becomes like a swimming pool,
Yeah, I
like a
remember
big,
that one.
yeah. And like as he's
Yeah.
falling, there's like a
Wow.
song. There's like a song that goes, "I'm falling away," but he's like dips into this like really cool like water thing, and it's Sprite, and like that is what Sprite is. It's like refreshing on a hot day. It's like this aesthetic. It's like because at the time in the mid 2000s, like everything was like soft rock, so like it's
Yeah.
soft rock, it's this, right? But like that has stayed with me for so long, and I always associate Sprite with that.
Yeah, I mean, even Drake, who I don't know if he's done a Sprite ad in years now, but like that, people make fun of that ad all the time and say what you want, but that stuck with me, like Drake in the studio. And I think this must have been like 20,
Like 2015.
20. Yeah, I was gonna say like, yeah, 2015, that sounds right. I remember it was like pretty early. I thought it even might have been before that, like 2014,
Okay.
or like 2013. But I mean, it just like his face, like he's like turns into a robot and like his face like
Mm.
pops out and like it's a whole thing. And it's like, maybe it's not, and the animation's kind of choppy. That's why I think it was older, because the animation wasn't there yet. But it stuck with me, and it's still, so even though I don't know if Drake's been Sprite doing stuff for them in a while, but I still won't stop associating Drake with Sprite, and like that's a powerful thing that you can get from just like a 30-second commercial or maybe less. I don't know.
Well, it proves like the testament of Sprite being able to adapt, because Sprite went on to do like they do basketball stuff, right? Like obviously like the Sprite cranberry ad has become just like a meme, the claymation thing with
Yeah.
LeBron
Oh,
and Dram and everything.
yeah.
Um, but there's also I the reason why I said 2015 is because it was in
Mhm.
2015 that Sprite did the rap lyrics on the cans.
Oh.
So I remember being in Washington D.C. because I had like a summer camp thing,
Mm.
and being in the subway in DC, and there were these Sprite ads plastered all over the place that with pictures of Drake, and I think like Big Sean. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if Big Sean was there. I think he was,
Mm.
and like maybe Travis Scott and a couple other rappers, and there were just like rap lyrics on Sprite can. I think like Nas and like Wu Tang. It was classic and old, and you
Yeah.
would get cans of Sprite that had rap lyrics on it, and there's a big one with Drake, and it was like know yourself, know your worth. That's from 0 to 100,
Yeah.
and I mean that just shows that like Sprite is sports, it's basketball, it's hip hop, it's all of these different things. And again, if you're in the boardroom and you tell them, no, we need to have Sprite mean one thing all the time, then they're not really going to listen to that, because they need to appeal. Sprite needs to be flexible, Coke needs to be flexible, vitamin water needs to be flexible.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring up vitamin water is because vitamin water tries to like angle itself as like a healthy alternative to like juice and soda and other things, right? But vitamin water is owned by Coca-Cola, but you don't see huge, ridiculous Coca-Cola branding all over vitamin water, because that's going to signal to people that, oh no, this is actually not healthy. And to be fair,
Yeah.
vitamin water is not that healthy. But that's sort of like brand differentiation. And again,
Yeah.
like I get really frustrated in political circles because there are people that, you know, to their, to be fair to them, like they've never had to think about it in this way, but they don't have like a critical eye towards what works in the real world, like what works outside of politics in the private sector.
As someone that kind of new to the game, it is really different, and it has been kind of something that you kind of have to learn to change your view of. I have spent so long consuming this type of media. It's really different perspective when I start producing it, and like I have a very different perspective. Like when I'm consuming it, like you think that you know what's you're consuming and like what's coming in, and like you think you have it understood pretty well. And you have to, if you're gonna, if the advertising is gonna work, you have to understand it and whatnot. But you just understand it in a really different way when it's like um, when you're producing it, because you're like, wait, this isn't exactly how I thought this worked in my head. Like I thought this is how branding worked, or I thought that this was what branding was just slapping a logo on something. But when you're doing it, you realize it's a little bit more complicated and like multifaceted and deeper than like just more levels to it than that. Yeah,
Yeah, stuff is always working at multiple levels,
yeah,
and it can be hard to see, especially for an organization as small as UDEM's. Like,
yeah,
it can be hard to see that, like, whether what you're doing is actually effective or not.
yeah,
Coca-Cola, they will get instant brand feedback from their consumers, social media. I mean, if it's really bad, they'll get phone calls from like millions of people telling them to switch back to normal Coke. But UDEM's, like, you can work on and present like a brand strategy for UDEM's and implement it from start to finish, and you won't even know if it was effective or good or not. Like,
yeah,
not that many people will comment on it. Like, no one will say anything. Like, they might think it's cool, but then they'll just walk away. Like,
yeah,
it's extremely difficult at this level to do that. So I don't blame anyone for thinking that, consistency and sticking to a theme would be the best way to do anything for a small organization. I don't blame them for that.
yeah.
The only thing I can say is that at a slightly higher level, at the state college dems level, which is what I have the most experience in,
Mm.
I I had a very freewheeling, eccentric approach, and from the limited feedback that I was able to get from people that I did not solicit feedback from, they just gave me their feedback. It was positive. Like, it was clear that people saw TCD as eccentric and flamboyant and
Mm.
freewheeling and very casual.
Young, I think that like that's just something that differentiates it from other political communications is there was a youth to it and energy to it.
Yeah, and people were recognizing that, hey, like, these guys' visual language is not the typical political visual language. I mean, there's like elements of like some of the stuff I was doing like had like punk elements, it had concert elements, it had stuff from the Olympics and other things too.
Yeah,
Like, people were people get curious and they're interested in that stuff, and they begin to associate TCD with that. With like they're always serving up something new and different, unlike other organizations that play it safe. I'm not
yeah,
criticizing them. If you don't know, you don't know,
yeah,
right? But that's what I've always tried to tell people. Like, you can't, like, there is no need for consistency, because that's just not founded anywhere.
yeah. It is what you make of it. These things are often are of like it is what you make of it. If you want to be like more experimental, if you want to be more push the envelope, if you want to try something new, then you can do that. And if you don't, it's you can probably fly by just doing recycling the same stuff, depending on what level, like what kind of organization you're at. Smaller organizations, you can probably get away with it. Bigger ones, you probably can't. But yeah, it is really just what you make of it. But I like it, it's just fun for me to kind of make it fresh. And I think for you too, it's just like you wouldn't be doing all the different things that you're doing if it wasn't fresh to you, if it wasn't cool and you didn't think it was cool.
I want to make sure, because we've been going for a while now.
Yeah,
I want to make sure we get to and make sure that the time that I spent was not in vain. I want to get to folklore album discussion.
Yes.
So
Let's do that.
so if you were living under a rock, folklore is what is it? The seventh, the eighth studio album.
Yeah.
I'm gonna Google it real quick.
Yeah, yeah. Don't want to get that wrong. And I wouldn't know.
Eighth,
Yeah.
eighth, baby. It is the eighth studio album from one Taylor Swift, American pop icon, T-Swizz, Tay-Tay. And yeah, she last month, July 24th, according to Wikipedia, she had a total surprise drop. She announced it day of. She was like, "Hey, tonight, you're getting a brand new album from me, and it's gonna be different, and it's gonna be my passion project or whatever, right?" And she released it, and it became like it broke tons of records for a release. Like, it got like, I don't know, like it was like the Billboard record that it broke was that it had. The album was number one debut on the albums chart, which happens a lot. That's not unique. But it also came with a song that became a number one debut on the Hot 100 songs chart that had never happened before.
Hmm.
So sometimes, like, when a new album drops and a single goes to number one, that single had already been on the chart before. So like let's say like The Weeknd, he had After Hours drop, like the album became number one immediately, but Blinding Lights became number one, but Blinding Lights had already been on the chart before. They had already
Yeah.
been there for a couple of weeks or more.
Yeah.
So this one, I think it was Cardigan went number one, but don't quote me on that. The song Cardigan entered the chart at number one.
Hmm.
So huge album, huge cultural impact. I mean, if you have your Swifties, they're raving about it. Your pop stands, they're going nuts in the studio. I don't know what I'm saying, and
They're going crazy.
yeah, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I had not listened to it. I had started listening to it, then I stopped because I was, it's a long album, so I didn't want to,
Yeah.
I couldn't listen to it in all one fell swoop, whatever. So I stopped it, and we wanted to talk about it for this podcast
Mm.
because Eli and I talk about music a lot. We have a somewhat similar music taste, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that we saved our discussion and certainly my first full listen for the podcast. And is this your first full listen as well?
Yeah, this was I mean, this was, I think, kind of differentiating from you a little bit. This was my first listen.
Okay.
I'd been able to kind of keep myself a little bit insulated from this. And even, and I kind of wanted to, because I did know for a bit that we were going to discuss this. I didn't want to, I didn't think about, like, I wanted to go into it with the perspective of not knowing this is supposed to be the hot single. And I've heard from other people what is and isn't. And it was interesting when I was listening through it to see, like, hey, I've heard this name before. I know that people really like this. I didn't really like this one, or like maybe I like this one that I haven't heard people be
Hmm.
talking about as much. And again, like we were talking about, eighth studio album from Taylor Swift. I don't really know. I love pop music. Like that's, I think with most people, it's pop for a reason.
Hmm.
I really like pop music, and that's definitely my favorite genre or macro genre of music is pop music. But I'm not a huge Taylor Swift person, and I think part of it, she's a very controversial figure, I think, and we can go into why that's so,
Yeah.
and what that stems from. And I think that this is, there's a lot of gender dynamics to that as well. So I kind of went into this album knowing I am a pop music person. I don't know this artist very well. The album has received all sorts of accolades. Um, I kind of want to know what this is all about. And I came in with thinking, I want to like this, I guess, to just kind of lay the groundwork.
So before you say anything about what you think about it,
Okay.
I'm glad that you brought up her past output, that you have not really been like a huge fan necessarily.
Yeah. Just to clarify that, it hasn't been in my sphere, I think. Like it just
Yeah.
has not, I haven't interacted with it much. It's not
Yeah.
like I heard it and I don't like it. Just like, I just don't know it well.
Yeah. So before we get into it, I also want to just mention my relationship with her music. Um, you grow up as a guy, and before you're really woke, before your third eye's open, right, you have a natural aversion, I think. Not every guy, obviously. Again, this is not a general rule.
Hmm.
Before you come to my DMs and yell at me. But if you're a guy who is just a boy, right? Like you're naturally like averse to pop music until you open your third eye. And you're like, oh, it's actually pretty dope.
Hmm.
Um, I started liking Taylor Swift during some of her singles during the Red era. So that's We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, 22, which is a bop, and I Knew You Were Trouble were some really, really good songs from that era, and I really like them. And I remember the rollout for 1989, which is my favorite album from her, from a couple years ago. I remember being really excited. Shake It Off was really good, Blank Space, and the whole album is really, really good, and I still really, really love that album. It is by far and away my favorite Taylor Swift album. And And her two most recent studio albums, aside from Folklore, I have not really been too crazy about. There was Reputation and then Lover. And honestly, like looking at both of those projects, I was not really a fan of the vast majority of both of them. Reputation had Look What You Made Me Do, which is, I really like that song a lot. Paradoxically, a lot of people like Reputation but hate that song.
Mm.
But I love Look What You Made Me Do. I remember when it came out, I liked it immediately. And I remember thinking, if this is a direction she's going in, she's kind of like doubling down on her controversy and her status and everything. And we can get to that because Folklore touches on that too. Um,
Mm.
but she's like owning it, and there is an element, there's more than an element of sexism in her Reputation. So I was happy to see her like own that and, be, defy the people that are trying to bring her down unfairly and misogynistically, if you will.
Mm.
But the album itself just kind of fell flat for me. And Lover had a few tracks that I was cool with. Shout out Cornelia Street, and her track The Man also explores a lot of those lyrical themes, and that's also a very good track. But the rest of it was really boring to me. So that is sort of the score for me with Taylor Swift. Like,
Mm.
I really loved 1989. Red had a lot of really great singles. I'm not really that interested in looking at her country pop stuff. It's no shade to that. Some of those have really good songs, like You Belong With Me and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Classic.
But I'm not that interested in looking too deep into this.
Yeah.
I like her pop era. So this is decidedly not super pop. Like, and she said so. Like, it was going to be folky and a little bit stripped back. And I mean, God, the album is titled Folklore, right?
Yeah.
So, with all that context, what do we think, Eli?
Okay. So I think that what you presented as like the different eras of Taylor Swift, even as someone who doesn't know her very well, but I'm still in the know of what's happening. I think that presents like a pretty good like dichotomy of like the different levels she's at. But for this album in particular, again, I went in it with a positive perspective, and that I do like some softer stuff than you, I think.
Yeah.
And this definitely, you look at the album artwork, you hear the name Folklore, you hear what she's been saying, because obviously this album was not released in a vacuum. It's going to be a softer thing, and it's not going to be as pop. But I think that this happens for a lot of artists when they switch lanes a lot. I liked it. I didn't love it though. It didn't feel to me. The two things that what I noticed, and like just going through it, the two things I noticed is it didn't feel very dynamic, and it didn't feel very full. And full, okay. That I don't have a music background, even though.
Yeah. Look, to be clear to everyone, like, Eli and I do not have a background in music. We're just two guys that like to listen to music. Like, these are our opinions. You don't have to agree with them. We think, I don't want to speak to you for you, but I think liking any music is valid. I'm very freewheeling about that. Like, this is just our opinion.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Like, it is just our opinion, and it's, even to preface it, like, I'm not even going to tell you it's a great one. It's just my opinion. It's just the one I happen to have. But yeah, that was just my perspective on it. It was just, it didn't feel, I haven't really gone deeply into her discography, but I have obviously listened to the songs that you mentioned from her pop phase with like Blank Space, and several other ones that you mentioned, and you hear those songs and it's full. Like, it's just, it really fills the headphones, and it gets on all levels, it feels like. But when I was listening to this album, it didn't feel as full. And I thought it was going to be the opposite, that I was going to, because I like I said, I like the pop music style, but I think that I have a different lived experience than, someone like Taylor Swift. And I was thinking, I'm going to like the music, I'm going to like the instrumentation, but I'm not going to like the content, the lyrical content as much. Mm-hmm. But I actually found it to be kind of the opposite. I thought that, I did like and relate to some of the lyrics, and I thought some of them were insightful. I mean, it wasn't exactly like it was stuff that like kind of, it was just not, I liked the lyrics, but I didn't like the instrumentation and the music as much.
Yeah.
There was some gems that I thought I thought actually towards the end of the album, which is not usually how albums work. I thought they actually became a little bit more dynamic. And two of my favorite songs off the album came towards the end, and I don't think that they were. Again, I didn't really intentionally did not look up which are the big ones, like the ones that are supposed to, I heard from friends like, oh, um, certain songs were bigger and more popular and whatever, but the song that I ended up really liking was Betty from the end. I think it's like the second to last track, maybe.
Yeah.
And
Third to
Peace,
last. Yeah.
third to last, and I liked Peace, which I think was also towards the end of the record. And it felt like those were more, and I also like the one with Bon Iver, just because, again, so she's doing this thing where it's just like very bare bones instrumentation, really focusing on her voice, and that's really similar to what Bon Iver does.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Bon Iver just has a fuller voice. And again, just my personal opinion, I just think he has like a fuller voice that he can really capture that, you know, dichotomy of like very bare bones instrumentation focusing in on my voice. So I really like that Exile song. But yeah, I thought towards the end it became a little bit more full and a little bit more dynamic. But what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah. I found this album to be unbelievably boring. Um, and there were some good spots, and we'll talk about the stuff that I thought was actually quite insightful. But all throughout, I mean, it's pretty long. It's an hour long, which is kind of long.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be mean, but it's pretty long. And obviously, like, there, if you know me, I like a lot of, I like pop music too, at the macro level and at like the genre level, right? So I like pop music, the music. I like pop rap. I like pop rock. I like, pop indie, pop alt, all that stuff. Like, so obviously, and this is pop folk, right? Like that is undeniably, it is undeniably pop folk or folk pop, whatever you'd say. And for all the talk about me only liking, trap music and club music and, stuff like that, like I also like stripped back ballads and interesting, like mellow stuff and everything. Like I can get down and dirty with that too. But something here just wasn't clicking with me. And I'm really glad you brought up the instrumentation, because I thought, wow, this album is really hampered by just boring production.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff that makes, at least to me, makes me want to fall asleep. And all throughout listening to it, it made me wish I was listening to something else, but something very specific. It made me wish, and I know a lot of the Swifties are not going to like me for this one, but it made me wish I was listening to Fine Line instead. I thought,
when you said I thought the Swifties weren't going to like me, I thought you were going to say it made me wish I was listening to Kanye, and I was I
wouldn't go there.
No.
Well, I mean, like they're not even comparable, but but and I don't even want to compare Fine Line and Folklore like 1-to-1 or anything, but Fine Line has pop, but it also has folk. But I think it's more interesting. Certainly, the production is way better.
Very
Fine Line.
Yeah.
It's varied. It's interesting, and it also has ballads and has folk and it has good lyrical themes and everything. Like, it just made me wish I was listening to that instead. And I try, and again, like you said, I did try to give it an honest shot. I listened to all of it. Typically with albums that I don't like the first 3 or 4 songs, I just don't listen to the rest of them.
Yeah.
But this one, I did want to make sure that I heard all of it, because it's Taylor Swift. Like, I will always give Taylor Swift the benefit of the doubt, because I like 1989 and her older stuff so much. Like, I will always listen to a Taylor Swift album end to end, front to back. But this one just unbelievably just was not for me, perhaps surprising nobody. And it is really, I think, like I said, like it, and I think like you said, it's hampered by the instrumentation. And I think the worst offender, and I don't know if you remember this necessarily, but on Mirrorball, which is like one of like the standout tracks, I think,
Mm,
from what I've seen on social media and what people are saying, like it is one of the more popular ones.
mm.
I I'm so frustrated with the instrumentation on that particular track so much that I wrote a note on it in all caps. I swear it has the world's quietest drums. You
Yeah.
can barely hear them, and people are going to say, "Oh, well, not all music is about the drums." And I agree with that. But why even have drums if you can barely hear them? If the
Yes.
drums were
Yeah.
louder, this would have been such a much. I would say that it would have been a good song if the drums were not so low. Why
That's
were they so low?
there's a different that's what I think separates stripped back from what this was, which if they're there, why are they so low? It just feels like the word I keep on coming back to is less full. Like it just feels less substantive when you have there's a difference between, like I said, stripped back is when you don't have it at all versus just empty is when you have it, but it's just like not really there. It's like it feels like a shell almost of like a drum beat.
The drums are so quiet on Mirrorball. It made me really upset. It was really distracting me because you could hear them, but they were so quiet.
Yeah.
And even, and I'm gonna mention Fine Line again, but like
Mm.
even songs that Harry did that had stripped back or even light drums, like you could still hear a snare, you could still hear light kicks, like you could still hear it. It was part
Yeah.
of it,
Is
even if he
there.
didn't have crazy like bass drums or anything like he had on some of those other songs. Like
Yeah.
it was still there. Here, like the drums just weren't there, and you could barely hear them. And it was, at least to me, it was really distracting as someone that I really like to listen to like the individual layers, and to hear drums so quiet, like it was really frustrating.
And
Like,
talking about the album Fine Line, the song off the album, like the song Fine Line off that
yeah,
album, I think that that's kind of a similar vibe, I would say. And I think he did a lot of things on that song for the production that made it fuller with like kind of the ambient noise going in and out of that song.
yeah,
I think that adds another dimension to the song and makes it weightier and makes it fuller. Where with Taylor Swift, it didn't have, because that song, there's a lot that song has different segments to it, but at the beginning, it's like pretty simple guitar, him singing with this ambient little thing going in and out. And even something like that, just to add a little bit of intrigue to it, I think was missing.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Like sometimes, like when you were hearing these songs on folklore, like what you hear is what you get, and nothing is
Yes.
gonna change.
Yeah.
And what I think makes music interesting to listen to at times is whether it's like interesting lyrical content that changes throughout the song,
Mm.
interesting production that changes throughout the song. Like all of these are elements that keep people coming back. And a song like Fine Line has that, but I found like almost none of these songs had anything memorable. Um, to me anyway. And
Yeah.
the most interesting song, the song that I almost saved actually was Cardigan. And I knew
Hmm.
that Cardigan was like the hit
Hmm.
of this album. I knew that like if there was gonna be a song that was like a pop song that might top charts and go super popular
Hmm.
among people, it would be Cardigan. And I heard it and I actually didn't hate it. I thought it was pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, I saved it and then I unsaved it just because I didn't like the rest of the album, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go back to one song. Um, and I'm unlikely to put this in any of my playlists, so it's just kind of that feeling I have. I don't know it. When the lyrical themes were good, they were really good. Like on
Yeah.
Mad Woman, I actually thought
Yes.
the
Yeah.
lyrical themes, and obviously, like, you know, goes without saying, we are both mad, and we are both, we are both, um, I'm not gonna speak for Eli, but I'm a cis straight man,
Yeah.
so I won't, I'm not gonna say Taylor Swift does not need my validation to let her know that her lyrical themes are good, especially
Yes.
if it's lyrical themes about sexism. Like she does not need me to say that, but I will say that I thought the lyrics were really good,
Yeah.
and it made me think like, who is she talking about here? Like, she's talking a lot about being considered like, crazy and hysterical and everything. And I mean, is she talking about Kanye? Like, who's this about?
Yeah.
Is it like a more macro thing where it's like everyone that talks about her this way? Is it Scooter Braun? Like, I don't know who it is, but it was really intriguing, and I think it says something that for most of this album I was not paying attention to the lyrics because I thought it was all really derivative until this song that really made my ears perk up, and I was really interested in hearing every single line.
Yeah.
But before and after that, it was crickets. I was not that interested in hearing about any of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, for me, I think I would agree with that. I think that Taylor Swift does, which some artists don't. I think she is invested in her lyrics. I think that she cares a lot about them, and I would agree on to what you had said of like, she doesn't need my validation to know she's talented lyricist. But
Yeah.
I will say, like, it's not really for me, and I don't think it's intended for me.
Right.
But it was thought provoking and it was thoughtful. Like, I could tell that she had thought about it. I thought about stuff in ways that I haven't thought about, and thought about stuff in ways that I frankly couldn't think about given my lived experience and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, for me, it is really, if I'm going to keep on listening to a song, the instrumentation has to be good. The music has to be good. I can't just rely on the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'll still listen to it and I'll still appreciate it and I'll still like it. But if it's a song I'm going to keep coming back to, which for me is what pop music really is, it has to hit that threshold of like, this is very innovative, or not even innovative, but just good music. It's good music.
Pop music has to be good to be good music. That's Eli. That's his quote. I want that everywhere.
Yeah.
But look, like I'll defend Taylor a little bit and say, like, obviously, like, this was not meant to be like pop hits. Like, this isn't like the dubstep infused I Knew You Were Trouble. This isn't the synth pop Blank Space. It isn't any of that stuff, right? So I'll give her,
it wasn't for me.
And we shouldn't judge it at that level. But at the end of the day, like, some of these lyrical themes were just like, okay, I get it. It wasn't written for me. I know a lot of people really relate to some of these lyrical themes, and they just don't reflect my lived experience.
Yeah.
And even if they did, I would wonder still my capacity to like them, to like the songs, just because, again, I find the production to be very uninteresting universally throughout the album. And again, most of the time the lyrics didn't even register in my head until they were more interesting. Like I said, like, I thought Mad Woman was really good lyrically, or they didn't register until they annoyed me, like on The Last Great American whatever it was. I was like, this seemed like an extension of this like Americana trip she's got since Lover, and I was like, I don't understand who this is for.
It's funny how memed that lyric became, and I think it's kind of a testament to what it is like that. I think a lot of people kind of felt a similar way as you did, because it's kind of like, wait, what is this? This stands out. It stands out, but I'm not 100% sure why. And I think as a producer, you kind of have to think like, or just in general, when you're making music, it's like, if this is going to stand out, why is it standing out? And maybe I just didn't get it. And again, I don't have all the context for everything, but it did kind of catch my eye or catch my ear, and it's similar to the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's just a tick that I have with it's a problem that I have with certain kinds of songs, like this weird like storytelling kind of song. Like The Last Great American Dynasty has like this weird like storytelling flow with all of these lyrics and things, and it bothers me, but it doesn't only bother me with that. Like, it bothers me with lots of other songs that try to do that. I think this might be a hot take, but like, I think the best storytelling music genre is rap music, and like I think it's more interesting to hear. And what I mean by storytelling, I don't mean it in like abstract terms. Like some of these other songs tell a story abstractly. Like this one is like, this happened and then that happened
Yeah.
and then this, like it's very literally a story.
Mm.
But I think even that, like, that's just a pet peeve I have with songwriters and singer songwriters, that like they make songs like that. It doesn't really, I know it's supposed to be like campy and maybe a little bit like heartfelt and touching and interesting. Like it just isn't that for me. And that's not just Taylor Swift. Like, that song, I think it's by Bob Dylan, Hurricane. It's like a big story,
Yeah.
like I'm not really, it's not like, it's fun, but it's not really gelling with me. The Double Went Down to Georgia, that's like fun too, but it doesn't gel with me. It doesn't really stick with me at all. And this is sort of like the same thing for me.
And I think that what you're touching on is kind of the beauty of Taylor Swift, is that she's been able, in such a long career, she's been able to constantly make music, and has made music that has, she started out not making music that was really for me with her pop country stuff. And then she transitioned into making more music that I felt as though was for me and that was similar to my taste and like I enjoyed. And now she's kind of transitioned away from that. But I think it just shows her like breadth, like just creative breadth as an artist, like how broad her style is, that she can really bounce back between those two things and make something that's for everybody.
And that's to her credit, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
I don't, even though I really didn't like this album, she did not, it doesn't feel ungenuine. It feels like she really likes doing this stuff. And I've never felt that way, but even though I've not liked a lot of her recent output, I've never felt like she's not just doing her own thing, even when stylistically it's been different for a lot of these albums. So I can't take that away from her, but I can certainly say when I don't really care for the music, and this is unfortunately one of those cases.
Yeah, it's honest. At least it's honest.
Yeah. I believe it's honest.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know why it has to be boring again. Like, I don't know. I know it sounds really bad, and a lot of people are gonna hate me as soon as they hear that. But it's a problem I have with a lot of stripped back music. Like I do like a lot of it, but some of it is just there is a fine line between stripped back and just boring.
Yes, yeah.
Like not interesting. Like why would you even write this song? Why would you put this on an album? Why would you do any of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that definitely that would mirror my thoughts. You mentioned before what you were thinking, like when you were listening to it, you were thinking like, I wish I was listening to Fine Line by Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Well, what I got was kind of, I think naturally from listening to Bon Iver was on the album, I thought Bon Iver.
Mm-hmm.
But also I thought Florence and the Machine a little bit. And I'm not 100% sure why. Because I think that Florence and the Machine is similar to Taylor Swift's more poppy or more her older stuff, like the 1989 Red stuff. I think she's a little bit more in that vein. Florence and the Machine is, but I don't know what it was about her vocal. There's something about her vocal quality that made me think like Florence and the Machine, and I think it's because I kind of long for that. Because I think Florence and the Machine has really good instrumentation, that I was longing for that instrumentation of a full song. And Florence and the Machine always has very full music. You can really feel like you can take a bite out of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never heard any of their stuff, so I can't speak to that. But I'm glad you brought up Bon Iver, because I don't listen to Bon Iver. I don't really know much about their music. I did not really appreciate the feature on this cut, on this album. I thought as soon as I heard his voice, I was like, I don't like the way it sounds. Yeah, but that's just me though. I mean, and again, I would never claim, anything about any of the music that I like, but there is just like a level of like, this is what I'm demanding from the music that I listen to, and if this doesn't fit any of the things that like I'm gonna be expecting from songs, then like this music isn't really good for me at all.
Yeah, and I think this is part of just being in such a metropolitan society, cosmopolitan, worldwide. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not really for me, and I know it's good, and I know it's good, and like I can appreciate it being good, but it's not really for me. And I think that some of this was kind of boring. It was just boring, and it wasn't great. But there was some of this that was good and it was great, but it wasn't for me. And I think it's kind of like it was kind of hard. It's kind of hard to dive through that and look through that critically, because I know that this is like, you can just, it's like a yum or yuck thing of like, I like this or I don't like this. But to really evaluate the perspective of like, this is good, but I don't like this, or like, this is just boring and I don't like it because it's boring. Those are different things. And I think that it takes a little bit more of a like critical eye to like kind of figure out what you're getting into there. But Taylor Swift's good, so you know that she's good, I think.
Yeah, and like to be clear, like just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that I didn't find some of it to be, or a lot of it to be, good at a level. Like I said, like I probably won't listen to Mad Woman again, but I acknowledge that it is very well written and it's very insightful and very interesting.
Yeah.
Some of the other songs I'm a little bit less gushy for in general, just because I found them to be so utterly forgettable. But like Cardigan was very well produced, very interesting. There's a lot that I was more okay with than I was just bored out of my skull by it. So, I agree with that like just because I didn't like it doesn't mean I didn't think it was like serviceable or good.
Yeah.
I just thought it was boring.
Yeah.
But that's like a different emotion, right? Like,
yeah.
A lot of people listen to the stuff that I like and they think it's boring, and I'm like, how do you think Power Glide is boring? And they're like, well, Power Glide sounds like every other song that sounds like it. And I'm like, yeah. Fair enough. But I like it. And I listen to this and I'm like, this just sounds like a really boring Fine Line. And I didn't love every song on Fine Line, but I thought it was like a masterpiece in how to gel like pop aesthetics with like this folk thing and have a couple of ballads thrown in there and have it be a really cohesive album. And short too, like contained. I think I'm about to look it up. Fine Line is only 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
And this album is like an hour and 5. And I'm like, if you're going to keep me here for an hour and 5, like you got to make it worth my while. And was not.
Not quite, yeah.
No. But hey, the people like it, so what do I know?
Yeah.
A lot of my friends like it. A lot of my friends, I remember, because Taylor Swift album comes out, I'm not going to listen to it immediately, but I will listen to it at some point, right? So I texted my friends and I was like, hey, like, so Folklore is good? ? And the first thing they say is like, yeah, but you're not going to like it. And I'm like, hey.
People know Marco.
Maybe a little too well.